Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Martin Salomon. We are on the Facebook page of the Romanian Cultural Institute in Tel Aviv, discussing about the Romanian movie, which is part of the Francofonie Film Festival in Israel. We are together with some guests who are supposed to speak about this movie. But first of all, let's see what is this movie about. This is the title is Somewhere in Pālilula. This is the cinematographic debut of the famous Romanian theater director Silviu Purcărete, and it's broadcasted on online for the first time in Israel with the support of the Romanian Cultural Institute in Tel Aviv on the occasion of the Francofonie Film Festival. The Francofonie Film Festival takes place between 1st and 7th of March, so we are quite in the middle of it, on the online platforms of the Jerusalem and the וחולון Cinematek. The festival is part of events designed to celebrate Francofonie Day, in which Romania traditionally participates together with other Francophone countries represented by diplomatic staff in Israel. I want to present our guests from Israel and from Romania. Alon Rosenblum is the director of the וחולון Cinematek, one of the two cinematics participating in the Francofonie Film Festival, and an old partner, of course, also of the Francofonie organization and also of the Romanian Cultural Institute, because the Romanian Film Festival, which is still ongoing in the וחולון Cinematek, is organized together as well. We are here with us is also Tudor Giurgiu, the producer of this movie and a globetrotter. He just came back from Mexico, if I'm not wrong. Welcome back, Tudor. He's the organizer of the Transylvania International Film Festival, the main and the biggest film festival in Romania, and a very good friend of us. He was the guest of honor of the Romanian Film Festival back in 2019, when it was still not virtual yet, it was still physical. He was invited as the producer of the movie Moromeții Doi, the opening film of the Romanian Film Festival. And the third guest is Aron Dimeni, who is the main character, is playing the main character of the movie of Somewhere in Pālilula. He's a very well-known actor in Romania, in Cluj. He's actor of the Hungarian State Theatre in Cluj, and he, as I said, he holds the main character, Dr. Serafim, in this movie, and I also saw him before as an interpreter of a very verídic role in an important Holocaust movie, Fateless, the movie directed by Lajos Koltai, Hungarian director, together in 2007, if I'm not wrong, together with Marcel Nagy, who was the main character. So I will pass the floor first of all to Alon Rosenblum. Alon, how is the welcome? Thank you for accepting the invitation. How is to be part of the Francofonie Film Festival? What is your experience during all these years?
First of all, we are now at the 6th edition of the festival. I am very happy to say that during the last couple of years, more and more countries have added movies. We started, I think, with only like 5 or 6 countries, and now we have between 10 to 11. It's very, very interesting, and it's broadening the thoughts, but it's a little bit, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to explain why, what is the difference between a Francofonie film festival and a French film festival. So we have to, we're trying to explain to the audience that it is something cultural, and it's not just the language, because it's not, of course, like someone in Pàlilula, it doesn't speak French, but it's something that has to do with, like, I would call it cultural heritage, or cultural, it's not acceptance, it's more to honor the culture of the French that have a very big influence around Europe. So we try to explain. Sometimes it works better, sometimes it works less. This series is a very special edition because it is online. So it's interesting to see that the people do come and you know, they watch movies online. Maybe for a producer, it's not very, it's not a good you know, sign that everything is moving online. Not everything, but the online is catching up. So I don't know, maybe Tudor will say if he prepares to an online edition of a festival, or like Transylvania, which I don't know if it was physical this year, or was it? Okay, we are on mute.
Yeah, I was just saying that last year we were managing to squeeze in the summertime in a period where events were still possible, so we did it on a physical way, and that's how we planned also this year in end of July. But let's see, you never know how things change.
You never know. So it is very interesting to have an online film festival and to see that the audience, I mean, the numbers are not as big as the numbers when we show the films in the theater. People still want the experience of coming to see everything on the big screen, and definitely a film like Somewhere in Pàlilula deserves the biggest screen, because, and this is for you, it's an amazing looking movie. It's like every shot there is like a piece of art. You can just took the frame and put it on the wall. It's really, really, really amazing. And I will want to ask you later about how they did it. But the festival is a new experience, and people are warming up to it, and they come and watch, which is good.
Tell us about your experience also with the Romanian movies. How Romanian movies, not just Pàlilula, also all the Romanian movies that you hosted in your Cinematek during the times, also the ones which were part of the Romanian Film Festival this year and the previous years, how were received by the Israeli public, and how is the Romanian movie industry seen in Israel?
I think it's like 15 years when the movie 3 months, 4 weeks, and 2 days came out, and it was brought to Israel by a very small distribution company, and it was a huge hit in Israel, and that opened the you know, the awareness of Romanian movies. And I think since then we have at least a movie or two from Romania to open commercially. I'm not talking film festivals, because in film festivals we see like, I don't remember the whole name, but the film, I think it was last year or a year before, We Don't Care If the History Will Remember Us as Barbarians, which was also, it was very, very big in the film festival circle in Israel. It moved from, I think it began in the Haifa Film Festival, and then every Cinematek wanted it because the audience kept asking about it and they wanted to see it. And we don't have a lot of Romanian movies shown let's say on TV or on VOD, or so the only place to see Romanian movies are in the cinematics, on the big screen. The distribution companies have opened up a little bit more to the Romanian movie industry, and they know that there is an audience. There is a very, I don't know if I can say it's a huge audience, especially not huge if you're talking about, let's say, the American movies or French, which is very big in Israel. But I think that the Romanian audience is very loyal. So you more or less know how many people will come when you're showing a Romanian movie. But it's going up. So, I mean, every year there's a bit more awareness. I think that the Romanian Film Festival that we did, I think this year is like the 3rd edition, if I'm not mistaken. And this year, because it's online, so we went on like more classical movies and not new ones. But also when we have new Romanian film festivals, people are really warming up to it. It's very good.
Our experience with וחולון Cinematheque is the best as well. Alon is always open to our proposals, and when it was physical, I enjoyed being there. It's very impressive cinematheque with very modern, and hopefully we can go back to soon. Now how about this this relaxation? Is it going to happen from Sunday? You will open your halls, your projection halls, or with some restrictions for the ones who are vaccinated, or how is?
Yes, we have in Israel something called the green passport. So yes, everybody who wants to come and see the movie has to present that he is already 2 times vaccinated.
Yeah.
We actually opened the doors 3 days ago. We were allowed to by the government. But it's going slowly. People are a little bit more cautious. They want, it's like, let them try, and if it's okay, we'll come. So it's not, we're talking about tens of people, like 30, 40, 50. But hopefully we will see it gradually go up as people will gain more trust in the system. It's a bit awkward, and you have to check each and every one, and they have to download an app from like the government app that allows them to have, and they have to come with also some identification. So it's a little bit, it's going like slowly, but it's working. So
yeah, I heard that in the Jerusalem Cinematheque, if I'm not wrong, there is a rule that those who are on the first row have to come 30 minutes before the show starts. Those who are on the second row, not second, the second probably is empty, and the third row is going to become 10 minutes later, and so it's a delay in times and all kind of funny rules. I'm curious if the Israeli public, Israelis are not quite obedient with rules, so I'm very curious how it will work, but it's good that it's happening.
Our distinguished guests here have to know that in Israel, law is more like a recommendation. So, and people decide if they want to follow the law or do whatever they want. So, we didn't do what Jerusalem. We said it will never happen. If we have to tell people to come in a specific time, it will be a really big headache. So. And
anyway, it's a step ahead, and we are anxious to see the Romanian Film Festival in the cinematheques, at least in the second part of this year. Now I will pass the floor to Tudor Giurgiu. Thank you, Tudor, for accepting our invitation, and welcome to our event. You were already asked by Alon about how was the Transylvania Film Festival last year, and how is the perspective for this year. In Romania, the vaccination campaign is not so evolved in such evolved phase like in Israel, so you can't simply impose a condition to only for vaccinate, because nobody will be there. But Tudor can tell us more about his perspective about the general cinema industry in Romania in the pandemics. But first of all, I would ask him about this specific movie, Somewhere in Pālilula. Tell us about your experience, how this movie was.
It's one of my dearest projects and films which I've ever produced. Maybe it's the one which I'm really the most fond of, because it was a tremendous complicated endeavor, financially, organization-wise. It was like climbing Everest in a way, you know. If I can relate to like one important milestone in my producing career, this was. And it's fun to talk to you now into a debate under the frame of Francophone Film Festival, mostly because I got an email, I think beginning of January, from a French distribution company based in Paris called Aide Distribution. They are very boutique. They are not a big distribution, but they really acquire risky films of pure art house films, with stunning visuals. And I got this email out of nowhere saying that, hi, we have seen Somewhere in Pālilula, and we loved it, we adore it. How this film was not actually screened in commercial distribution in France, knowing that France is a country where, you know, this kind of cinema usually it's being shown. And even though the premiere was 10, 12 years ago, they really would like to release the movie this year in France. So now we are in contact, we're exchanging emails, and it's like a big surprise, but I think it's very nice for the movie to finally finding a way and finding a home in France, like a main territory for the cinema lovers who love this kind of cinema. So it was complicated, it was difficult, but it basically we shot the movie in an abandoned factory in Bucharest, because we were trying to find locations which will match somehow this province town in the 60s in Romania, but everything has gone. I mean, the country has changed so much, and we were finding just corners. And we then came, I mean, the director and the production designer came then with the idea that if it's about to build a fantastic story in a way, and why don't we anyway accept the convention and build somehow a set like Fellini did once or twice with his movies. I mean, actually with most of his studio-based films in Cinecittà. So we were building sets into this factory. We were shooting in under harsh conditions. It was very cold and so on. But I think I'm very proud with the movie. It's a very unusual, I think, project in the borders of film, cinema, opera. It was firstly shown in Karlovy Vary Film Festival, an important festival where they really loved the movie. And then, of course, it had an international career. So now I'm happy to see that this career really starts in a way, as I've said, with France.
Actually, I want to ask you, is it still the brand of the Romanian movies that they are about communism? Actually, this movie is about communism, even if time is not clearly defined. At least I didn't recognize the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, which time is, of course, it's communism, but it's kind of, how to say, absurd and somewhere lost in time, right? Can we say so?
Yeah,
intentional. Of course,
yeah,
it's intentional.
Yeah, but I don't think communism is necessarily the trigger point for this particular story. It's, I think, a lot which deals with this very particular and very specific vision of the director, because I think Silviu Purcărete, the director, is mostly known in the theater world, in the opera world. He's one of the most admired stage directors. He recently worked in pandemic in Tokyo, in Japan. He told me surreal stories about working with Japanese, like the biggest company there. He did a Shakespeare. So it was his first adventure in cinema, and I think he wanted to tell a very particular and very personal story. And somehow, I think the success or the reason for this film being, I think, such a gem is I think relates a lot to I think to the quality of visuals, of the storytelling, and I think somehow it's many Romanian films with or without communism. I think they can be remembered, and they left a trace on the viewer. I think because they are good. And I just heard today that we have. There are rumors saying that the new Romanian film by Radu Jude might is, or at least is in some kind of pole position to get the Golden Bear these days in Berlin. So I think, you know, these I think recognitions have to do, I think, with the exceptional quality of Romanian films, which, you know, I think the same story, I think, goes also in Israel. I've seen so many great Israeli films in the last year. So I think there are two countries with, I think, the personal stories with complicated history, past, present, and these are enough reasons to generate good cinema.
I have to say that
Yes.
when I saw the film, I thought one of the things that really caught me in the Pālilula, first of all, I very much appreciate and love movies that are surreal. I mean, I don't really like the, you know, how do you say, the present, you know, the reality. I don't really like the reality that we live in. And I really, really love things that are a little bit surreal. And what really caught me in this film is that it's a film about a place and people who are stuck in conventions, but the film itself breaks every convention that we know about movies. So you have the visual, strong point of view of nothing is what you think you see is not real. And the people who are still refuse to advance a little bit. I wanted to ask actually you and Aaron, because when I saw the film, I said, okay, the producer read the script and he was going like, oh my, this is a big headache. And I wanted to know the reaction, both of you, if it's okay, when you first read the script, because I think that from an actor point of view, it's something that not everything is, I don't know how the script was, but not everything is explained in the script. And sometimes people do weird things and it's not like justify, like they like to do it in America, to justify everything, and everything has to be closed. And in this film, he said, "Oh, I don't care. It's good for the art. I'm doing it." So I wanted to know what was the first reaction as a producer and as an actor when you finished reading the script for the first time.
I remember precisely that the first draft had around 300 pages. It was easily a movie 3 hours plus, and I got a headache because I did not understand basically the story. It was so much. I mean, more than what's in the actual movie. So many more characters, many more. So I got really like, there is something there, but I don't get it. And being honest with you, it took a lot of time for me to talk to the director and to what is in his head and why he wants to tell the story like this. Because as said, it's very personal. It's a story about his youth, about when he was 20 and something, young graduate of the theater academy, arriving in this very specific place, surrounded by drunkards, by storytellers, and somehow he found a way to survive in communism through fantasy and storytelling. But this I found out very, very late throughout the process.
Aaron?
Well, good evening. Hello to everybody. And I just want to thank you for your invitation. Well, if Tudor is so sincere, then I will be honest as well. My story with the movie was, I think, extremely personal. I worked a few years earlier, before the shooting, I worked already with Silviu. I also saw some of his stage works. I knew that this is his first movie. Basically, I used to work with movie directors doing their first movies. And at a certain age, not necessarily young directors, but that's only an anecdote. So basically, I read the script when I get it. Before I was able to read it, there were a lot of rumors. Everybody knew that Silviu Purcărete, the director by that time, and by now as well, for me at least, is going to make a movie. I also knew that he selected me, but I had absolutely no idea for which part, what is the movie about. We had some discussions. We were touring together. He told me that he is doing a movie about these storytellers. We were discussing about, but it was kind of a blur. So when I read the script, I said to myself, all right, you just adore Silviu. You love everything he does, working with him, watching his work. Okay, I will put my body, my soul, my talent, as if it exists, everything I have in his hands. So I was never questioning anything. And I also remember Tudor was telling about his doubts. And I also remember that at a certain point, I was kind of arguing with a part of the crew, as they just didn't understand what's going on. So we met on the set for the filmings, and in a half an hour we found out that Silviu just changed a lot of things. And people doing, how should I say, normal movies we've seen before, they were just going crazy. They were telling, who is this guy? He doesn't know nothing. And I was arguing with them, stay calm. Give him a credit, because you will see that this will be different, and it will be not only different, but very special and very marvelous. And as I was preparing for this discussion, I watched again the movie, and I had a feeling that it's, for me at least, it's like a good wine, or I don't know which is the good metaphor. So it's better and better even after these years. And I also want to mention that at the time we were shooting and we had the opening. Yes, it was a Romanian movie, and it is a Romanian movie, but it was radically and totally different of the movies were made by that time. So a lot of people told me that they were preparing for something like the so-called new wave of the Romanian movie, but this is nothing like that. And I said, yeah, this is another approach of the history, and also I think I'm not wrong if I say that it's not only talking about the last 50, 60, 70 years of Romania, not in a realistic way, but it's for me, it's also a kind of homage to the movie itself. So we can feel Fellini, we can feel Tarkovsky, probably a lot of other directors, great creators I don't recognize. So it has so many layers that I'm very convinced it's one of those movies you have to see again and again and again, time by time.
Yes, well, I certainly saw Tarkovsky in there. Also Peter Greenaway, a lot of Peter Greenaway.
Sure.
It is very amazing. Was it hard emotionally to do the movie? Because it looks very, like you're getting pounds of physical and mentally blows in the movie.
Well, memories are changing everything. But yes, sometimes it was hard. Sometimes it was hard. It was a very beautiful but also complicated personal time for me, as my daughter was born a day before I went to Bucharest for dress rehearsals, and then in 10 days we began to shoot. So it was a lot of things happening inside me, but maybe that was good. And also there were little tricks. I suspected Silviu to make it on purpose, but I'm not sure. We never discussed about this. One of them was that at the first phase, there were discussions about a lot of my colleagues from the Hungarian theater joining the movie. But finally, I was the only one. That also meant that I was the only not native Romanian actor. As I am a Hungarian, Martin told before that I work at a Hungarian theater in Cluj. So, for instance, Romanian is not my native language. And of course, I know a lot of my colleagues. I met some absolutely wonderful actors I still have a great respect for. But I was in a certain way, I was coming from outside, which is exactly what happens to Serafim. And I just adore Silviu, and I'm very grateful for him. But I also know him. We worked on theater before and after the movie, and I'm pretty much sure that he calculated this. So he felt that there will be something different between us.
Can I ask something about this issue? Your thoughts were told by another voice. It wasn't your voice, right? Your comments. Is that because you have a Hungarian pronunciation in Romanian, so it's disturbing? So they decided, the director, the producer, I don't know, decided to make you a ventriloquist and give you another person's voice instead of your own?
Well, if I'm allowed to tell stories.
Yes, of course.
When we were invited to join the opening in Bucharest, my wife came with. And we were watching the movie, sitting on the audience, and I remember that we were almost arguing because she was telling that this is your voice. And I was telling her, no, this is not my voice. So I have to tell you that except laughter and crying, my voice actually doesn't appear in the movie. Yes, it was a difference of pronunciation, of course. And I was quite hard to convince about accepting this situation. I remember that we had a almost 2 hours long discussion with Tudor about this when they took this decision. Though I have to admit that it was a good and a lucky decision. It was a good decision because bringing in this line in the story that this guy is coming from somewhere else, that he is not like the others, the movie is not about that, not at all. And lucky it was because the old voice you hear, and this is my big somehow honor at one hand, is Silviu Purcărete. It's himself. So the old guy talking, that is the voice of Silviu. And the young doctor speaking is Marius Manole. Now the story, he's a wonderful actor, a wonderful person and a wonderful actor. Now the story about my wife and me arguing if it's my voice or not. Marius did an absolutely wonderful job. He not only came over my voice, but he felt somehow exactly. And this is extremely rare. I watch a lot of Hungarian television, and in Hungary they used to have over voicing. And it's very rare when the actors actually get into the skin of the character, which Marius did. So I remember that I was watching the movie and I heard exactly what I was trying to do when filming. So I'm grateful for him forever, basically, for this. But yes, it's his voice and Silviu Purcărete's.
I have a question for both of you. Just a moment. Can I? I have a question for both of you. What do you think this story of Pālilula is a metaphor of what? A metaphor of today's Romania, of Romania, of the communist Romania. Maybe I'm stick with the communist, but actually communism is just a hint here in this movie. It's not actually about it, of course. Or it's a metaphor of Sodom and Gomorrah, or something. I want to have a conclusion. I don't have a conclusion. I saw the movie and I trying to figure out. Of course, Pālilula is a metaphor for something. What is it for you? Tudor.
I'm trying to remember Silviu's precise description of what Pālilula is, because before shooting you had to do all these, director's vision and documents when you apply to funding. And Silviu wrote something beautiful saying that Pālilula is a fictitious place in between Transylvania and Orient, full of drunkards, crazy people, opera lovers, and people who are, as Alon say, people who are unable in a way to leave. They are somehow locked into their daily life. They do not aim to change the world. They feel good where they are with their social life, and I think in a way it's a very good description of let's say of a small city, or how the life was in communism in this at this micro level. Because as for the ones who live under communism, like also my generation, we felt in a way the last 10 years before Ceausescu's fall, between the 1989 moment, I think beside all the tough moments, it was a lot of joy. It was a lot of singing, a lot of joking, a lot of this feeling of like flirting with disaster, and a lot of absurd. I mean, Romania is the country where Eugen Ionesco started. So I think these feelings are very present in the movie.
Yes,
Aaron?
I agree with Tudor. For me, I just made a note about this. It's basically the metaphor or of the, and that's what I didn't know how to note, of the last 50, 60, 70, maybe 100 years of this country. Because as they live what Tudor just described, they keep calling back another history. So we can see a kind of history of the communism, so to say, or not the communism, a history of those times, with people calling and wishing the times they left behind. It was so all the scenes with the grandiflora, all those remembering of the good days, and still they are living in somehow good days. They are allowed to be totally crazy, totally insane, totally surrealistic. And that is also wonderful. If you think about the way we live now, we have all these devices, all the technique, all of everything. But basically, we are marching for money, for some small dreams, maybe. This could be our dream right now as well. Just to have a world where you can do whatever you want without big restrictions, and where even death is somehow kind and joyful. So I was watching the movie, and I was very touched by the way Silviu thinks about human being and human livings, with all the weakness, all the craziness, sometimes all the ugliness of it.
Alon, you wanted to say something, yes.
I'm taking you back to the change your voice. The decision was made when, if you know, before the shooting, during the shooting, at the editing room?
At the editing room, so it was after the shooting. As we had these extremely difficult working conditions at that former factory, we all knew basically that there will be overvoice. But I left the shootings thinking that it will be my voice. So that was somewhere in January or something like that. I don't remember exactly the end of the shootings. And I remember that we had these discussions I told you about before with Tudor somewhere in the summer. So it was a later decision.
Okay. Did you talk about your name in the movie, Seraphim?
Yes, a bit.
No, because in Hebrew, Seraphim is angels.
Yeah, I know.
So I was wondering if it has a different, another meaning, not just a name, because you are kind of an angel coming to this little town.
Yeah, you can't say no for this approach, but at the beginning of the film, there are two names, and actually, the doctor Silviu talked with a lot when he was young, and the part of the stories which are the base of the movie were told by Dr. Dragos Serafim. So that was his actual name. You know, it wasn't a name invented for the movie, and that means a lot for me, because Silviu told me that he had a lot of stories told by this certain person, and it was somehow, very touching that there was a person with this name telling stories like this.
I have a question for Tudor. First of all, I have to say that the movie is very, very precise. Like everything from the lighting to the sets, to the props, to the costumes, everything is very, very, very carefully looked at. And the movie, I'm not expecting numbers, but it looks a very expensive movie. Because I can imagine you spent hours lighting it, and if you said that you had difficult conditions, so it looks very, very expensive. Was it expensive, and how is it if you put it as general in the Romanian film industry? Was it a very expensive movie to make, or is it like a general budget that comes with it?
I think it was one of the most expensive films in the last maybe 10-15 years. I think the budget was roughly 1.6 million euros. Wow. And but imagine that, you know, we are a country where the movies are usually being done around in between 300 or 600,000. So it was quite an effort, and because it was there were many actors, complicated conditions, a lot of props, a lot of costumes. The music had to be recorded in Budapest with orchestra. We spent a lot of money on visual effects. So it was like an extravaganza at the time.
Was there any thought, because now when we saw the movie, was there any thought, if you know, maybe to transfer it into theater, to make it like a show?
No, we were kind of we knew from very beginning that it's a story which have to be told through cinematic language. I mean, Silviu did theater a lot, and I think he has his own way to tell stories in theater. Here, even though he used elements from theater and from his very particular way of doing theater, he used it in the mise en scène, but it was a very sure decision that it's going to be a movie.
Okay. The budget, what you said, are similar to what we have here in Israel. Mm-hmm. I think this is why the industries in Israel and in Romania, I don't know how many movies are made in Romania every year. In Israel, it's about 30. But also we have most of the movies are made by 300, 400 euros, of course, shekels. And the expensive ones are more or less what you said. Yeah. So I think it's a bit similar, which is nice.
Okay, now that we are closing to the end of our event, and before asking and before concluding, in my opinion, I don't know, for me, it was more like a metaphor of Sodom and Gomorrah from the Bible. Especially because of that scene when it burns down, and it's like God punishing the people who didn't behave as they should have been, right? With all those behaviors. So maybe that's closer to my understanding, personal understanding. Tudor, I would ask you just in a few words, if you can conclude, tell us about how the film industry in Romania is affected by the pandemics. Is it measurable in numbers? What happened in the last year? Even in this situation, a few good movies were shot in these months, and you told about Radu Jude's movie, which is has chances to win the Berlinale. So what happened with budget-wise and numbers of movies? Did it decrease?
I think the situation is pretty dramatic, because I think the cinema sector was not supported at all. I'm talking about particular support by the state, and the budget of the fund, which is under the Romanian Film Center. So the cinema fund is being hit severely because all the money which they collect are money from the real market. We do not receive money from the state budget. We receive money from cinemas, from the advertising industry, from television, and cinemas were closed, I think, 8 months last year. Now very few are opened. The television had less money. So I think the fund is really struggling now, and they are not being, they do not get extra support from the state. The filmmakers themselves, the distributors, the exhibitors are not supported. So I think it's really, I think, maybe the worst years in the recent history of Romanian cinema. I don't see the light yet. I don't know how we're gonna manage to get out of this black hole. And very few films had premiere last year. I mean, maybe 6 or 7 films, and maybe also a couple of documentaries, like long documentaries. And as you see, I think some films have been shot, like Radu Jude, but I think the perspectives are grim. But as we live in these absurd territories and under absurd situations, it might be the year when Romania will be first nominated at Oscars. The documentary Collective is an amazing documentary, and I think it has strong chances to be nominated at documentary category, but also at foreign film. And now with this Berlinale hype around, so we might end up in a situation like Romanian cinema is being again praised all over the world, but the practical situation is catastrophic. So, yeah.
Nobody is a prophet in his own city, right? This is I am in biblical mood now. We have some questions, comments from our public. Ronit Cohen asks, okay, I think this question was already answered. The film reminds me of Louis Buñuel's The Exterminating Angel. What is the inspiration and significance behind the name of the main character, Seraphim? The answer was that it's a coincidence, but a happy one, right?
Yes.
This is again by biblical subject. Okay, somewhere in Pālilula. Sorry.
Sorry.
A film that intertwines in an ironic form of sarcasm, grotesque, and social satire, created from a multitude of dioramas specific to the local scene. The atmosphere radiates to the viewer, giving him a perfect view of the feelings experienced by the character. Made with great accuracy and intelligence, the film impresses lovers of the psychological genre. This is a comment. We have a very high-skilled public here, and one from Andy Ceaușu. This is in Romanian. Undeva la Palilula, film care împletește sub o formă ironică sarcasmul. Păi asta e. Oh, this was translated for me. Okay, thank you. So this was from Andy Ceaușu. I think no more questions from our public. Let's keep fingers crossed for the Romanian movies, for the Oscar and for the Berlin prize. And I want to thank to our guests, Alon Rosenblum, Tudor Giurgiu, and Aaron Dimeny. And there are still a few days to watch the movie somewhere in Pālilula, the Romanian movie, which is part of the Francophone Film Festival in Israel, on the platform of the וחולון Cinematek and of Jerusalem Cinematek. Be with us. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.